Hello and welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. My guest today is Johnny Vaughan. Johnny, what's happening with you?
Not much, man. How you doing?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right for a cold Saturday in South Carolina. I'm looking for this snow. I haven't seen it yet. So hopefully it stays chill. Um,
Yeah,
and I just want to thank you. We've already kind of talked this week. We break bread every once in a while. We took a little bit of a step away from that, but we got back to it. And you had already said that you would be willing to get interviewed, but we bumped up the date based off our conversation from earlier this week. So, if you don't mind, can you just tell the people who you are and how we met?
okay. Well, my name is Johnny Vaughan, and we met at an open mic poetry event in Rock Hill this past June. I was reading some of my poetry. You read some of your poetry, and
Mhm.
we just met up. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a comment. It wasn't just that there were many poets there that day, but it was your content that drew me because you had content that got into the plight of being an African American male that resonated with me, and so it led me to just introduce myself. I'm glad I did because we've been kicking it ever since, right?
Correct. Correct. Yes.
So why don't we start there, man? Tell me a little bit about. Can you tell the people what this poem? Do you remember the poem that you wrote and what the content was?
Well, yeah, I remember it was called "Hustling for Manhood," and basically the poem was about myself, growing up without a father, having to learn how to be a man on my own or through different sources. So the poem kind of, I think, it's a situation for a lot of young black men that grow up without fathers or they don't have a good relationship with their fathers, so they have to try to find ways to find manhood, outside of that. And a lot of times those sources are negative, such as gang members or just people on the street that don't mean them no good, but they're looking for that fatherly figure.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So basically, yeah, my point, I just wanted to kind of reach out to people and try to reach the people who kind of like could identify or kind of relate to that situation that I was talking about, because it's very prevalent out here.
Is very prevalent. And if a child, specifically a son, doesn't have an image of a father to connect with in their
Mhm.
formative years, that can lead to a lot of detrimental things. I knew my dad. My dad passed away about a year and a half ago. However, I know what that plight looks like and how important it is for young black men to begin to navigate through that. And so that's why when you began speaking to it, and all the different youth that I've spoken to, that's why it resonated with me. And so, I appreciate you sharing your story. I mean, anytime you get up on the mic and you're willing to not just, write a poem that's talking about nature and clouds and whatever, but you're willing to be transparent and expose a part of yourself for the viewer, for the listener to then come into your world and understand your world better. You're doing a good that's now greater than just it's for the plight of all African American males who have been in this circumstance and have been misunderstood and misrepresented, and undervalued. So that's what's up, man. That gets into why I even have you here today, because to me, that's tapping into what I call genius. And what you call genius and what I call genius may be two separate things. And so that's why I want to kind of bring us together and see if we can't come to a new conclusion and be on the same page that you have something that everybody has a piece of, and that is genius. So with that, man, I just want to ask you, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I never looked at myself like that, honestly. A genius? No, I looked at myself as a person who just likes to write poetry and wants to help people through my poetry.
Yeah.
I never looked at myself as a genius. Maybe I'm just being too humble, but yeah.
This is a common approach though. Like, you're not alone in this assertion that, hey, I don't, you can name a genius, but when you begin to name a genius or several geniuses as you look into society, we never really, I say you, but it's really we never really attribute it to ourselves. So I bet if I ask you, who do you consider to be a genius, you have somebody that comes in mind. Like, who comes in mind when you think of like that person is a genius though?
One of my favorite rappers, Nas. I think he's a genius when it comes to the lyrics and the way he just his flow and the way he just spits image, like the way he makes you see images when he raps.
Yeah. And so
Yeah,
that's cool because you see somebody that you have a common thread with. He's a wordsmith. I like to call, he can be a poet, bard, spoken word artist, whatever, but I like to call us wordsmiths. And so when you see one wordsmith that's operating in your craft that you share, it's easy to kind of be like, yeah, they got it though. So the thing of it is, you have a commonality with Nas. It might not manifest itself the same way, but you both are. Well, I'm gonna put us in the mix. I'm gonna put myself in the mix. We all, Nas, you and myself, have this ability to create with words and to express with words, and not just express, but to express them in a way that rhymes, to express them in a way that delivers a message that's clear and that's engaging. And so, that I'm glad that you put it within a cultural perspective. It didn't go to like an Albert Einstein, because most people attribute genius to him. But I like the fact that we got into this hip hop vein, because there are some geniuses in hip hop that you and I have talked about offline. But if we share this common talent, this common thread, what then distinguishes Nas's execution from your execution, such that you would say, yeah, Nas is a genius, but I don't know about me though.
Oh, with Nas, I think it's the way he raps, man. Like he could just put a thought. He has a song where he rapped backwards.
Yeah, I remember
Like
that.
you remember that song on Stillmatic? And I'm thinking
Mhm.
that is genius. That right there solidified his genius to
Yeah,
me
yeah.
right there. Like I've been a fan, okay, but when he rapped the song backwards, hands down, that's it.
Yo,
That's top five status.
you ever you ever listen to somebody that executes so well, you just literally you be like, you know what though? Like I'm done, man.
Yeah, exactly,
I'm not touching
exactly.
it no more.
Yeah, I'm not even touching it no more. I'm
Yeah.
like, he inspired me to be creative. So yeah,
Yeah, for me, one of the guys that inspired me at the same time and want to break my pen was Busta Rhymes. Busta Rhymes would rhyme out the same syllable for like 20 bars. I was sitting there and count sometimes, like, okay, he just continuously is rhyming off the same. And I challenged myself probably like 15 years ago to begin to write content where I could just rhyme off the same syllables like Busta Rhymes, because it was ridiculous how you can pull these words together, still say something coherent, but pull these different phrases and these common phrases and put them into something that's a new tapestry that had never been heard before. And so I get what you're saying, like, man, like the execution is not like my execution. But
yeah,
I hope that you walk away from this interview today and say, like, you know what though, I have my own genius. It's not Nas's, but it's mine. And that's the whole point. Um, it's good to compare when you want to challenge yourself to do better. But when we begin to compare in such a way that it devalues what we have to offer, then that's the challenge for me, where I try to like get in on the inside of that and say, no, you got to know that you have something special too. So and I almost wish that I had this image so I could put it on the screen. Maybe I'll do this in the future, but there's this phrase that comes from Albert Einstein. It's a saying, and it says, "Hey, look, if you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it'll spend its entire life thinking it's stupid."
mm, okay,
Yeah, you know, I think that hit you. So,
yeah,
and the image that I have when I share this with people is an image of, it has the phrase and it's on this tree. And at the bottom of the tree, there's this little fish, and he's like hanging onto the roots for dear life. But what do you know about a fish though? Like,
well,
do fish climb trees?
nah, they're not supposed to.
They're not. So if you see a fish climbing a tree, something is terribly wrong with the earth, right? There's a
Yeah,
lot of stuff that's wrong with the earth, but when I see trees filled with fish, then I know it's time to get off the planet. Something is off, right?
right, right.
Fish belong where?
In the water,
And fish do
swimming.
what in the water? They swim, right?
Yeah,
So you comparing yourself, or anyone who compares himself to an Einstein to gauge their genius, they're going to spend a lifetime discrediting themselves, because they're going to be like, well, I'm not climbing trees like Einstein, so I guess I'm not a genius. And that's not how this works. Like geniuses have lanes. Einstein had his lane. His lane was physics. We have our lane, which is being a wordsmith, which is getting into the creative side, which are completely different hemispheres of the brain. And so to compare our genius to his and say, well, we don't have any, is a discredit to us. Like we belong, if we're in this metaphor, we're the fish. We belong in the sea. Now, to begin to get more so into this Nas comparison that you had and me with Busta Rhymes, there are different types of fish in the sea, right?
Right.
And different types of fish, though all the fish are in their element, all the fish are doing what they were designed to do, which is to swim. Does every fish swim the same way and at the same speed?
No, no.
Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So you might be looking at Nas like, okay, he's a barracuda. And you a killer whale, right? You're going to execute differently. You're going to
Right.
hunt differently. You're going to socialize differently. But that doesn't discredit what you have to offer from what he has to offer. His
Right.
platform is just bigger than ours, right? And but
Yeah.
that platform, the size of that platform should not cause you to then weigh your genius less than his. You feel what I'm saying?
Yeah. I got
So that's the whole point of this talk and these workshops and this book that I came out with, is to really help everyone embrace this idea that there's genius potential on the inside of you. Because once you realize that genius potential is there, it'll make sure that, I think your contributions will even improve. I think your writing will even improve, because you're like, you know what, though, I'm coming from a place that is gifted. I think you're gifted, but going the step further and saying I'm a genius, though. And I like the word that you used earlier. You was like, yeah, humility. I don't know if I'm just being humble or if it's humility or what. What are you getting ready to
yeah.
say?
Oh, I was gonna say that. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I know I'm gifted. Yeah, I know I'm talented, but the word genius just sounds so like up there. You know what I'm
Right. You
saying?
put it on this pedestal.
Yeah, on this pedestal. Right. It just sounds so up there, and it sounds kind of like a little braggadocious, a little bit. Like I'm a genius. You
Well,
know
hey
what I'm
man,
saying?
ain't that the nature of hip hop though? Ain't that the nature? Like, they braggadocious about it, man. They say they're
It
the
is.
best.
Yeah, it is. It is. It
And
is.
it's
But
not, genius isn't saying that you're the best, it's saying that you have something unique. And you're going to see, I have three components that I've broken genius down into, that once you see how these three things come together, I think you're going to see that, oh, okay, I might be able to associate to this. But it's
mhm,
this pedestal that we put it on, that's just out of reach of us, that discredits what we've been designed to do. And I want us to reach our full potential. I want you to reach your full potential. And it begins with how you see yourself and how you label yourself. Is that fair?
right. Yes.
All right, cool. So let's get to it. I'm going to tell you that I've already mentioned it. There's three components that I've seen genius in, and I'm going to tell you that right now. The three components of genius are a combination of your passion, your talent, and your purpose. And so, because you and I have already gotten into the talent, I'm going to kind of go out of order and just start with the talent piece, whereas most of the time I would start with passion. So we both identified that our talent is that we are wordsmiths. Are you comfortable with that word? Like me saying that you're a wordsmith?
But yeah, I can go with that. I can take that.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we know that we have this on the inside of us, and we know, you and I are both Christians. We know that this is a God-given talent. It's not something that came from us. It's something that came from above, that God gave to us, because he is a wordsmith too, is he not? He created the entire universe with words. He
Right.
spoke words and things came into existence. And he's given us a piece of that to be able to create worlds of our own. Like, you created this world with your poem that drew people into literally what you grew up in, and to give them a piece of that to help understand and to help have empathy and to help get a better grip of what many other minority young men might have gone through with having grown up without a father. And so that's
Right.
powerful, is it not?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the talent piece is clear, right? But what I want to add on to this talent piece is, I want you to remember this. Think of your talent as a tool. All right. Most of the time for us, we think of this pen as a tool, and it is. It is a tool. Anything that we put in our hands that helps us create is a form of a tool. Anything that we put in our hand that helps us fix something is a form of a tool. So I just want you to make that T connection, T for tool and T for talent, and we'll get back to it in a second. All right.
Uh,
So that's causing me. I got another question for you. This is going off script for me, but this is good. This is why I like having different people on. If you think of your talent as a tool and you think back to this poem that you wrote, what were you fixing by writing this poem?
Writing the poem, I was trying to fix pain. I guess I was trying to fix the pain because there's a little bit of pain. More so. I guess it varies per individual, but there's a little bit of pain for not growing up without a father, for growing up without a father. So I just want to reach out to that pain. I want to speak to that pain and try to, in a way, through my poetry, through my words, identify the pain and then fix it, I guess, fixing it by addressing it and then maybe coming up with conversations to try to have a solution, to this. I mean, the problem itself, I don't know if you can solve. Well, if you don't have a father, you don't have a father. But I guess it's the way of trying to handle it mentally to make people handle it more healthier, mentally.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to fix, the mental health behind the problem.
So this was an internal fix for you.
Yes, internal fix. Yeah, that's the aim of a lot of my poetry. Is to fix things internally. Because once you fix things internally, the things will get better externally.
Yes, you can function better, right?
Function better, right? So that's the aim of like a lot of my poetry is to deal with the people's emotions. To help people deal with their emotions. And my poetry is an outlet for me to help deal with my own emotions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say that, so when people read my poetry, they're seeing a battle of my emotion.
Yeah.
So therefore, when they see my own personal battle, maybe it can help them deal with their own personal battle. That's my whole goal behind writing poetry, to help myself and other people. Just trying to bring therapy to the world in my own way.
Yeah. I mean, that's what started in me. Like at the age of 19, me being someone who was more geared towards mathematics, at the age of 19, God literally unraveled this gift on the inside of me and was like, here, do something with this. And I was like, oh, snap, like, what is this? And so I took this tool and did the same thing you did. I started looking internally at some of the issues that I had, some of the rejection that I went through as a child. My first poem was called As My Shadow Blends into the Midnight Winds. And it talked about how, though I exist and though you see me like a shadow, I can just kind of fade in and fade out and nobody misses me. Right. And it went all the way into my childhood and the things that I experienced as a childhood that alienated me and that caused me to feel like my existence, though I'm here, I'm really not here, like a shadow. And so I was resolving the weakness of that rejection and then realizing that it became a strength of mine because now, at that time, and even still to this day, I don't need to fit in with everybody because I learned to be confident and to be resolved in myself. And so in exploring that, I fixed this detriment and turned it into a strength. And so then my next poem started dealing with heartache, started dealing with, the breakup of my girlfriend from high school when I went into college. And then it progressed. It progressed to the point where I was not only looking inward and looking at, okay, what can I fix about me? What can I address about me? I started turning outward and being like, man, this stuff, bro, I see racism in the school that I go to. I see injustice. I see this. I see that. I started addressing the other things that I saw that were broken around me through my poetry. And then it wasn't until I started sharing it. I remember I shared it my freshman year that other people now could get access to this tool and maybe begin to like, hey, look, I feel like that too. I went through the same thing and then begin to get some sorts of healing, some sorts of being fixed by me sharing. And that's exactly what you do as well. And true
Mm-hmm.
genius starts that way. It starts as a very localized thing that you can't keep to yourself forever, though, because you're like, look, I think other people are struggling with this like I'm struggling, and I want to help others as I've tried to help myself. And so you share. That's very much a part of the genius process. If Einstein never let anybody know what the theory of relativity was about, we wouldn't have the type of technology that we have right now that is still exploring in computers and the whole quantum mechanics is based off of some things that he discovered and chose not to really explore. But I mean, even looking at Nas, what if Nas at the age of what was he like 15 when he came out with his first album? Well, what if he just never shared any of his material, right? Like, nah,
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything worth sharing. What if he looked at the people who he thought that were geniuses in his time, who was big, was like a Big Daddy Kane, right? What
Yeah.
if he looked at Kane and was like, Kane is a genius, man. I don't have any, I can't do what Kane does. Like Nas wasn't a dancer, right? But Kane got on the
Yeah.
stage and took over the whole stage. He didn't just get on the mic and bless you. He blessed you with his footwork. What if Nas was like, I don't have that footwork, so I guess I don't have it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
True.
so you got something, man. We got something, and I just want to explore that more. So, remember, the talent that you have is a tool to address something that's broken. You've already done that. All right.
Right.
So the brokenness that we actually identify in ourselves is a brokenness that exists in the world. Because, like you said, hey, look, the brokenness that was in you was this being fatherless, growing up without a father. But you're not the only one in the world that ever grew up without a father, and you realize that. And you say, hey, look, I
Mm-hmm.
know. He said, this is it's a problem, and I heard you say, I don't know if we can solve it, but when you begin to address something that's large scale like that, like, look, I don't know if I can fix this, but I'm gonna get at it anyways. That's starting to tap into your passion because passion focuses on what's broken around you. What's broken around you that affects you in a negative way. And so would
Mm-hmm.
you say that broken families is a thing that exists in all of society?
Yeah. Definitely.
And there's many
Definitely.
different aspects as to why families are broken, but we're gonna park on this lack of a father figure in the family as the reason why a family can be broken, because that's the poem that you created, right? That's what you would begin to
Right.
address. And so
Mm-hmm.
let me ask you this question: would you say that growing up without a father is something that you hated?
You know what? When I was a kid, it didn't bother me much. It didn't bother me at all, really. I just said
Okay,
I was like, okay, that's the situation. That's what it is.
it is what it is.
It wasn't until I got to be an adult actually that it kind of like it kind of dawned on me like, I really didn't have a father.
Yeah.
That's when the pain came as an adult and not as a kid.
Okay.
And I know that might sound kind of weird. You
Nah.
think it would come as a kid too, but it came as an adult when I really understood and realized the situation. You
I mean,
know,
Johnny, your situation is your situation. Like somebody else processes it differently, and the pain comes when they're a child. But again, it's about this comparison that we do. Just because your pain didn't come as a child doesn't mean that your pain is not valid, right?
right?
It came when you were an adult, it was just as impactful. It was just as potentially crippling as if you had experienced it when you were a child. So when you realized that this issue was a problem for you as an adult, did
Mm.
you would you say that you hated that you experienced that?
Yeah, yeah, I did. It's not a pleasant feeling. I mean,
Yeah.
don't get me wrong. I go through life, and I'm an adult now. You go through life, you just deal with it. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I hate. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I guess you could say hate. Sometimes I just, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes I hate feeling like that, but when I really think about it, but it is what it is, man.
Yeah.
And
And the reason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, the more that I accept the situation, it kind of, I guess I can say this, it kind of decreases the hate and the pain a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Day by day,
Hmm.
the more that I just accept the situation and just try to just move on, the pain and hate decreases. you know.
Yeah.
So that's just, yeah. All right, go ahead.
Sometimes we say, hey, look, we don't like to say this word, especially if it's directed at a people or a person. But I'm not talking about like, hey, did you hate your dad? I'm not saying that. I'm saying, oh, did you hate your
Yeah.
mom? I'm talking about, did you hate the situation? And the reason why I'm getting at this as I'm talking about passion is because how I address passion as it relates to your genius actually gets into what is it that you hate in the world. And this is a concept that I got from a book called The Assignment by Matt Murdock. I said Matt Murdock, that's the Daredevil. Mike Murdock. And he began to say, hey, look, if you want to figure out what your assignment is, what you are purpose to do in this world, then you need to figure out what it is that you hate. Because the thing that you hate is the thing that God puts you on this planet to fix because he hates it too. I would say because God is a father, I would say that you growing up without a father is something that he hates. There was some sin behavior involved in what the outcome was that you were fatherless, that God is like, that's not how I meant the family to be brought up. And so the thing that he sees that's broken in the world, he designs each of us to say, I want you to address that. And how you'll know to address it is it's going to grieve your heart the way it grieves my heart. And that grief that's in your heart begins to be a thing that you talk about, like, ooh, I can't stand it. You talked about it by writing about it, right? And I would wager to say that you probably have several poems. You have other poems where you address that. Is that a fair guess that you have other poems that address your fatherless?
One other poem. One
Yeah,
other
at
poem
least
that I
one other,
wrote.
right?
One other one. Yeah, I was in my 20s when I wrote it.
And if you see somebody else that's going through it, a young child that's going through it, it might trigger some things in you. Be like, oh man, like let me talk to this kid, let me do something, because you're like, I hate that circumstance. I hated that I had to go through it, and I hate that somebody else has to go through it. And you may be inclined to speak to a kid about that, whereas me who had a father, I might not be equipped to talk about it in the way that you can talk about it because you went through it and you have that emotion, right? And so when you begin to tap into that, that's your passion. You've heard people say, like, man, I hate that with a passion. And once
Mm.
you have that passion, once you lock into it, that's something that then drives you to do something about it. And you said, I'm gonna go back to what you said again. You said, I don't know if you can fix it, but you won't care if your poem fixes the situation. You just want to address it.
Yeah, I just want to address it and just try to tap into people's emotions and just go from there. Maybe we can have a conversation about it and just try to make people feel better about the situation. That's
Yeah.
my whole, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and once you share that and get other people, there are going to be some who are going to connect with you. Like me, I didn't go through that, but I connected with you either way. There are some who did go through that who are going to connect with you, and now you're beginning to rally people behind you with people with ideas like, what can we do to continue this dialogue? What can we do to continue to talk about this? What can we do to begin to disarm this thing that's affecting an entire community? You see how it begins to have a snowball effect and it gets bigger because as you
Yeah.
continue to share, it's not like a one-time thing. It can become even a movement. And there's people out here and movements that are addressing the fatherlessness in the Black community. That's already there. But just because it's already there doesn't mean that, well, I guess I don't, somebody else is already doing something about it. Your angle, your approach to it is needed because it's not the same as somebody else's approach. It may be similar, but you have a unique approach to it that's unlike anything else that anybody has ever done. And that's why it's needed.
Right.
And so that thing that you see, that thing that you say, hey, look, I'm pulling this planet to address it. And I'm using your poem as an example, but there may be other things. Like I have multiple passions. I have multiple things that I hate, right? And I take this tool that I have that we share as a wordsmith, and I begin to address it. The thing that I hate, this is the reason why I'm talking to you right now, is if I talk to somebody and they don't believe that they're a genius. Being a genius is part of your DNA. Being a genius is a part of your makeup. And if I see somebody that doesn't know the full measure of their identity, that bothers me. And I want to do something about it. And so I did something. I took my wordsmithing and created a book. The same title of this interview is the same title of the book. It's the same title of the workshop. I did this workshop 3 times yesterday virtually in one school, because I'm like, when I go into a school, when I go into a classroom of 20 kids, and when I ask at the beginning of the class, who's a genius, and nobody raises their hands, I'm like, I'm in the right place. Let's talk. I want to address it. Every classroom is like that. And it's not, it doesn't become a daunting thing where I'm like, it's too big, I can't address it. I'm like, yo, that's my Goliath though. And I'm coming for his head. You feel me?
Yeah, got you.
I
Yeah,
got my 5 smooth stones, and I'm coming for your throne.
got you, man. Yeah.
So the reason why this hate is focused on because it drives you. It's like, man, this thing is so large. If you remember David and Goliath, David was offended by this. He said, like, you uncircumcised dog, like, how dare you come at God? Because it's like, forget the people. How dare you come at God crooked? How dare you come at God with anything less than honor and reverence? He was like, man, give me something to knock this dude out. I'm gonna take him down a peg.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
the question that I have for you now is, outside, we can stick to this fatherlessness, but outside of that, tell me something that you hate.
I hate what I hate. I hate just a lot of stuff, man. I hate racism.
Yep.
I hate arrogant people.
Mm-hmm.
I hate mean people, evil people. You know what I'm saying? It's just a lot of stuff, man. I hate crooked people. I hate thieves. I hate rapists, murderers. Yeah, it's a whole lot of stuff I hate in the world, man.
Yeah. So if you don't mind, I want to, because when I talk to kids about this, when I talk to like middle schoolers and high schoolers, I always try and tell them like, hey, look, man, don't focus on the people. Remember, I said like I wasn't trying to get you to say I hate my dad, right? You hate the fatherlessness that you experience because of your dad. And all the
Right.
different things that you mentioned, the rapist and the arrogant person and the crooked, the thief. There's a sin that's behind each one of those things. In my book, it's a flip book, and one side just talks about genius from a very generic, very very stripped down point of view for secular people to be able to embrace it and understand it. But if you flip it over, it gets into the scriptures of it. It gets into the kingdom aspect of it. And God hates sin, right? It's not the sinners that he has a problem with, it's the sin that creates the sinner in man. And so he's designed us to address all those different things that you hated, though they manifest in people. The root of it is sin. And those specific sins are things that I hear that you hate. And so, is sin not a part of what makes the world broken in the first place?
Yeah,
It
definitely.
is, right?
Yeah.
So then what sin do you think you're designed to address? What broken thing in the world can you apply your tool of wordsmithing to begin to address and fix?
As far as the sin is concerned, like what sin I can
I'm
apply it
saying
to?
sin, but it doesn't have to. I don't want you to get stuck on it's a sin, right? Because then you're like, I ain't no
Yeah.
minister, right? I'm not trying to
Yeah.
get you to be stuck on that. But of the things that you mentioned, if you have this tool and talent of wordsmithing, what do you see that you could begin to address in such a way that you feel like you could begin to fix it?
Uh, the feeling of loneliness.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, the feeling of having no purpose in the world. Yeah. The feeling of just feeling like you just don't belong in the world. I kind of want to address that with people
Okay.
because sometimes I feel like that. So anything I talk about or try to address in my poetry, I've been through it or I felt it. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? All my poetry, or most of it, is personal.
Hmm.
You know, so I'm putting myself out there with my poetry.
Yeah.
So I just want to address a person's how when a person when they're feeling low about their worth.
Yeah.
I kind
Okay.
of want to address that.
So
Yeah,
unworthiness and loneliness are something
right.
you would want to address and fix. Okay, those are admirable things to focus on. Now, I have a suggestion for you, even that you could do with the poem that we started talking about. But I want to hang my hat, or hang your hat actually, on addressing this loneliness and unworthiness and feeling like you don't have a purpose in life. So, in order for you to address it, you need to have a platform. We talked about platforms earlier. I alluded to it briefly when we said, hey, look, don't discredit your genius, because when you look at Nas, he has a larger platform than you. You have a platform. Tell me a little bit
Mm.
about your platform because you have a business.
Yeah, name of my business is Johnny Vaughan Poems LLC, where
Hmm.
I just try to give a unique gift to people. Say for example, you want to give, it's the anniversary of somebody's birthday. You want to give them a gift. You can give them one of my poems that I write. I can write it up and you can just give it to them as a unique gift. Hey, I say, hey, I got a poem for you. I can make it very personal. It gives
Hmm.
that personal touch by including personal details that you give to me about the person. I can incorporate it within the poem just to make it feel more personalized.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it would be a nice, unique gift to give somebody for their birthday or anniversary or whatever the occasion might be. Or it could just be just in general, no occasion. You just want to give somebody a gift.
yeah.
Give them a poem, that right.
You know what's funny? I don't know why I haven't told you this before, but I did the same thing. Um,
Okay.
Maybe going on 15, 20 years ago, I was doing the same thing. I didn't put a business name to it, but so my wife and I worked with youth at the church that we went to back in that time, 15, 20 years ago. And she worked with the girls, I worked with the boys. But because we were dating at the time and eventually married, we saw both of those sets of kids, whether they were boys or girls, as people who we could pour into. And so when I knew that it was somebody's birthday that was in our youth group, I would write a personalized poem about them and give it to them and put it with a little background. And it was basically a personalized card, right? And then, there were some people who told me, like, you should write cards. And I was like, yeah, I think I should. But, it didn't really plan out for me. But what I began to do, and this is what I see for you, and you let me know how this vibes with you. The platform that you created, like, you can still have this unique gift for people, but have you ever considered doing workshops centered around some of your poetry?
No, I never thought about a workshop. No.
Yeah. So, for example, this is Black History Month that we're in right now, right? And I wrote this poem one year called "Watch the Invisible Man." It was based off of Ralph Ellison's book, "The Invisible Man," about the plight of the Black man in this country who is looked through, who is looked around, who is not observed as someone who is a contributor to society, as someone who is even part of society, and thus the title "Invisible Man." Yet and still, there's this line from Most Def. Most Def has this song called Hip Hop. And one of the lines in the song says, "The invisible man's got the whole world watching." Like, though we are not seeing the things that we create, the things that even who we are, our resilience, our character is something that the world watches. They watch it in sports, they watch it in entertainment, they even begin to emulate it in entertainment, right? So this person that's invisible is being watched by the entire world, though. And when
Right.
I thought about that, and Black History Month came into existence that year, not came into existence, but it rolled around that year. I came across this article where there were a bunch of names of Black inventors and Black contributors to society that I had never heard of before. But they were people who created the laser. They were people who improved the acoustics in the microphones. They were people whose creations helped with 3D imaging. And I was like, I've never heard Lonnie. I'm blanking out on this name now. That's terrible. But did you know that a Black man created the Super Soaker?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And of course, anybody that had a hot summer would have thanked him because he came up with that pump gauge that allowed you to shoot real far, right? So when I looked
Mm-hmm.
at all these names, and it's ironic and fitting that I can't remember his name right now. I was just looking at it the other day. But when I looked at all these names and I realized, like, yeah, we're invisible. Like, how come we focused on the same 20 uh, Black inventors and contributors during Black History Month? That's how it feels to me sometimes. But here I had this list of names of people who have major contributions to things that we use every day and appreciate every day, but the names were unknown to me. And so I created an entire poem that incorporated these 20 some inventors into a poem that said, like, watch the invisible man up. And so I got a chance to read that poem and then have a discussion, a workshop based around it, where I just took the different stanzas and said, let me read this stanza. Let's pause and talk about it. What did you know about this person? Let me give you some stats on who this person is. And so I see that for you. I see that you could take I don't know if you've written poems about feeling worthless, feeling lonely, or feeling like you have no purpose, but I'm gonna
Yeah.
go with what we started with. This poem that you wrote, tell us the name of it again. The poem about being fatherless.
Oh, it's called Hustling for Manhood.
This poem, Hustling, that's a dope title, by the way. Hustling for Manhood would be a workshop that if you saw Hustling for Manhood as a workshop as a young Black man, would you want to go hear about it?
Yeah, I would
Exactly.
attend. Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, the thing that makes it unique for you, Johnny, is the thing that made it unique for me. I went to a high school, I read this poem, and then remember I told you there's a line in it from Most Def, The Invisible Man's Got the Whole World Watching. And I said, you know what? I want to play this song for you all. Listen to what it's saying, because it talks about, the culture of hip hop and how it's influenced the world. And at the end, I remember one guy came to me. He said, I've never been, it was a young Black guy. So he said, I didn't know what to expect for this Black History Month. I've been to a couple of these things, but he was like, this is unlike anything I've ever been to before. He really appreciated it because of my address, my angle to include hip hop, which is a culture and language that he spoke, to then spit the way I spit. I'm not saying that, I killed it or nothing like that, but I definitely brought some light to these names in a way that nobody else could, to honor them. And I see you being able to do the same, to be able to read this workshop, to be able to read this poem, and then say, let's talk about the different pieces, and to give people a voice, because that's what you ultimately want to do. You gave yourself a voice, but in doing so, Johnny, you're giving other people a voice too.
Right.
And so I see that as something that you could do, man. Like, you could start to have individual workshops around several of your poems that begin to address this thing that you see as a problem, these things that you see as problems in the world. And when
Right.
you do that, Johnny, that's you tapping into your genius.
Hmm.
So how's that
Okay.
hitting you, man? What you think about it?
It sounds like a good idea. Definitely.
And we're next to a city, Rock Hill. You work in the city, and you work in a city that's very creative. They embrace the arts. They have a whole council, a whole committee that embraces the arts and is asking for contributors from the community to put out. They offer small grants and everything that encourage people to present something that hasn't been presented before, and to then open it up so that there's an audience for people to receive it and for people to digest what it is that you put out there. And so that's a way to enlarge your platform, man. And the last component of this genius equation is purpose. And you talked about it, like, I hate it when people don't know their purpose or don't have their purpose. So sometimes I felt like I don't have a purpose, but I'm telling you right now, your purpose in life, Johnny, is to identify your talent, which you've done, and then apply it to your passion, which you've yet to do. But I think that you can get in that. When you walk through that equation like that, my guy, you are walking in your genius.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to just that's the main thing, that I wanted to leave you with, because God has definitely put you on this planet. He even allowed you to go through this sense of not having a father, because he was like, you're one who was going to bring a voice to the voiceless and begin to speak to an issue, not from a perspective where you're from the outside looking in, but where you're already from the inside looking out, like, this needs to be dealt with, this needs to be addressed. And that's a perspective that then becomes your testimony, and your testimony is going to free and liberate others, because they'll see you as someone who has survived. They see you as someone who has decided to expose his life for the purposes of helping others, and that's going to inspire other people to want to do the same.
Yep. That's the whole goal, man. Just to help people and help them have a better life, man. Help them have a better mental health, better mental health.
Yeah.
The whole goal, man.
Yeah, you said that from the onset. And so you said that from the onset, not realizing that you were speaking about your genius. But now I hope I've kind of closed the gap to let you know the mindset that you already had is a genius mindset.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that, man.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's part of my
Yeah.
thing, man. You got to know, as readily as you answer to the name Johnny, you gotta regularly answer to the label, to the title of genius.
Okay. Okay. I can get with that.
All right.
I can get with. Yeah. Genius. Johnny the genius.
Yeah, you
I
got
can
that
get.
alliteration and everything, man.
Yeah. I can get with that. Johnny the genius. All right. Bet.
All right. So that's all I have, man. I just wanted to take some time and talk to you. I'm glad we got a chance to get this on the schedule. We were supposed to do this in April, but an opening
Yeah.
opened up, and I'm glad that I was able to get you in today. So I'm gonna sign
Cool.
off. We'll continue to connect the environment. Is there anything I can help you do to get these workshops together? Remember, I told you before, man. Like I got some bandwidth to be able to help you bring some of this stuff to pass, man. So we're gonna chop it up, and we're gonna definitely let Rock Hill and the surrounding community know what we got to offer.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Rock Hill's gonna know Johnny Vaughan and Reggie K.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, man. All right, man.
All right, man.
All right, man. Have a good afternoon.
You too.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at Inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.